Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'm Liz Wheeler. Welcome to the Liz Wheeler Show. If you have not already subscribed to the show, please do that. Go ahead and pick up your smartphone and go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, click that subscribe button. If you like the video version of the show, go to YouTube. You can find me at Liz Wheeler. Go to Rumble, rumble.com/Liz Wheeler. Hit the subscribe button there. On YouTube, if you hit the bell, then I can notify you every time we have a new episode, a new interview, a new video. We have lots of new content all the time for you over there. Really appreciate everybody who's been subscribing. And don't forget, if you haven't, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Okay, in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. today, what I want to talk about, we will be talking about the new monument, the new statue, I don't even know what to call it, and you'll see why in a moment, that was unveiled in Boston this weekend in honor of Martin Luther King. We'll be talking specifically about how horrible modern art is. It's simply dreadful, and how disappointed Martin Luther King Jr. would be in the state of racial divide in our nation, thanks to the Democrats. It gives me no pleasure to say that. It's a very sad thing to think all those years after the civil rights movement that this is where we are. We're also going to be, let me rephrase this. Actually, what I want to say is what I was planning on talking about today was the Biden classified document scandal. This is quite a big deal. I know that there are some people, actually on both sides of the aisle, some people who are saying, you know, you're not going to change anybody's vote by talking about a classified document scandal. The working class man's not gonna, you know, stop his job and say, you know what, all of a sudden I'm going to vote for a Republican after never voting for one in my life. I'm never gonna vote Democrat again because Biden had a stash of classified documents next to his Corvette. And listen, I get that. I totally hear that argument, and I think in a sense, there's some validity to that argument, but there is a lot more about the Biden classified document scandal than meets the eye. I like to call it almost political incest that's behind this. First, the targeting of President Trump, and then the way that Biden's classified document scandal is being handled. I was going to talk about that today, but then over the weekend, I was talking to you guys online, and I said, well, what's been going on lately that we haven't talked about on the show yet that you want to talk about, that we want to unpack, identify the what it is-ness of the topic, and then properly order our response, which is what we do. And a lot of you said, I want to talk about Andrew Tate. Can we talk about Andrew Tate? And we have not yet talked about Andrew Tate. If you don't even know who Andrew Tate is, that's okay. I'll tell you who he is, why he's controversial, why some conservatives are embracing him, why some people ought not to be embracing him, why he's so incredibly popular online with young men, the allegations against him. You guys asked to talk about that, asked for my thoughts on Andrew Tate and his brother being arrested in Romania, the accusations against them of rape and sex trafficking. And let me tell you, we haven't talked about this on the show yet, but we're going to today because I have many, many, many thoughts about this. The Biden classified document stuff, don't worry, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, so stick around for that. We are also today going to talk about the CDC. The CDC flagged the COVID vaccine booster, the bivalent booster, as potentially dangerous for old people because they found indication that there's increased risk of stroke in the 21 days after someone over the age of 65 receives the COVID-19 vaccine booster, the bivalent booster. We're also going to talk about the new variant. It's a Omicron subvariant, and it reportedly, according to the New York City Department of Health, is more transmissible to certain people. Certain people are more likely to catch it, and it's not what you think. You might be surprised about who is more likely to catch this than others. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get to it. Okay, it's MLK Day today, so happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It should be a better day. It should be a day that we can all come together in our country and celebrate the triumphs of our nation over some of the errors and the sins in our nation's past regarding the discrimination against Black people in our country. But that's not really what MLK Day is anymore. It's just a reminder of the racial divide that exists in our nation because of Democrats' race baiting. We'll talk about all that in a minute. Before we even get to that, I want to talk about this sculpture. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. In Boston over the weekend, they unveiled a new sculpture. It's supposed to be like Boston's Statue of Liberty. They're trying to make it not more prominent, but they're trying to make it cooler than it actually is. They're calling it Embrace Boston. And the statue, it's in Boston Common. And the sculpture, it's not really a statue because it's not actually people, as you'll see in a minute, is supposed to depict MLK embracing his wife, Coretta Scott King, but it's not a literal rendition of this. It is modern art. This is the unveiling. Take a look at this. Okay, if you guys are only listening to this show, I highly encourage you to go watch this video. Let me tell you what it is. So there's this giant black blanket drape over this sculpture. It is yanked off. You're expecting to see a depiction of Martin Luther King embracing his wife, Coretta Scott King, and instead you see, what is it, guys? I know you're thinking this. I know everybody who saw that sculpture is thinking the same thing. I don't care if it's obscene. I don't care if it's classless. You look at that, and what does it look like? It looks like a couple of hands. It looks like a couple of hands on a giant wiener. There's no polite way to say this. It is so atrocious. This is a photograph. I want to show you a photograph of what it looks like from the back. I can't even say these words. It sounds too gross. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about Cozy Earth. Guys, I'm starting out the new year right with a great night's sleep thanks to my Cozy Earth bedding. It's no wonder over 5,000 customers have left 5-star reviews on their website. Swapping out bedding, if you're anything like me, you hate this. Swapping out bedding to suit the weather is such a pain. It's actually why I like Cozy Earth bedding. It keeps me cozy and comfy year-round, regardless of the temperature. Cozy Earth is the softest, most luxurious, and responsibly sourced bedding in the world. It's made from bamboo. No wonder top designers choose Cozy Earth. But my real favorite thing about Cozy Earth bamboo bedding is their bedding is naturally temperature regulating. So it doesn't matter if it's hot outside, if it's cold outside, you will sleep comfortably all year round. No waking up in a sweat and then freezing because you're sweaty. I sleep so much better on my Cozy Earth sheets, which are on my bed at home right now. So whether it's their luxury sheets, their loungewear, pajamas, or new bath collection, you will love shopping at Cozy Earth. Plus, Cozy Earth bedding comes in a beautiful reusable canvas bag. You can save 35% now on Cozy Earth. You have to hurry though, this offer ends soon. Go to cozyearth.com/Liz35 and be sure to enter LIZ35 at checkout to save 35%. That's cozyearth.com/Liz35. Okay, so that was the video, but this is, can we see this first photo? This is a photo of the back of the sculpture. The back of the sculpture. You have to be honest with me. What do you think when you look at that? We're all thinking the same thing here. What on earth? What on earth? Okay, so then can we go to the next photo? The next photo here is the same frame, but this is without the fencing around it. So now you can see that there's what looks to be part of a man's arm and a woman's arm with a bracelet. Okay, but what are they embracing? What is this object that they are embracing? Oh, good Lord. I don't know if the artist had a dirty mind or if this artist was just high out of their mind. So I want to show the comparison picture next. This is actually the photo of MLK and his wife on the right, where he has his arms draped about her. I think this was a photo just after he realized that he won the Nobel Peace Prize. This was his celebratory embrace with his wife. You can see how the hands are crossed. And when you see those two things, the photograph of MLK and then the sculpture juxtaposed next to each other like this, you can see the hands look similar. Sure, okay. But why don't they have bodies? Why don't they have heads? And what is that object in the middle? I know this is going to sound very uncultured, but I hate modern art. I find modern art to be so ugly, so horrific, so horrendous. I don't find it to be abstract with some hidden meaning that you just have to step back and tilt your head to the side and look at it from a certain angle. I find it to be atrocious. This is Liberty University's Freedom Center posted this photo, and I think that this is a great comparison. Back in 2011 in Washington, D.C., you can see it on the screen, there was a sculpture that was erected in Washington, D.C. of MLK. That's what it looks like. It is MLK standing with his arms crossed, looking out. It looks like he's looking out at our country with like firmness and love. And it's cool. It's really cool. it shows a living part of history. And then down here, 12 years later, we have this. If this is not commentary on how our culture has devolved, then I don't know what is. But what is it? What is this? Like, what were they thinking? Modern art is just so horrendous that if I were MLK, I would be so insulted. But here's the thing. We can mock this sculpture all we want, and we should, because I don't want our country decorated with objects like this. I mean, anyone can make this object. It's like when they stack a tower of sponges and tie it with a ribbon and say, oh, this is worth $1,000. This is worth $10,000. Like, no, it's a tower of sponges. Of course, anybody can do that. But the big question on a day like today is not just to make fun of terrible artists and their terrible art and cities that fall for this and actually pay good money to display this in their city, but to ask the question, where are we as a nation racially? Because Martin Luther King, this was a long time ago. Martin Luther King and I Have a Dream was a really long time ago, and it was a pivotal moment of our country. It was an incredible thing that happened to see how much we've overcome as a nation, because we were founded on the proper cornerstones, on the idea that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that skin color and race and even sex don't factor into whether or not God endows you with these inherent rights and whether government is prohibited from infringing upon them. Those are the proper cornerstones on which no other nation had ever been built. And yet, once we had that proper founding on the proper cornerstones, sinful men and women in our nation misapplied those cornerstones, and they discriminated against people. They discriminated against Black people and against women, and we misapplied them for a long time in egregious ways until we course corrected, because that was another cornerstone of the founding of our nation that was proper. The idea that just because we stumble doesn't mean that we can't turn around. Just because we err doesn't mean we're irredeemable. This is what I wish we were celebrating in our nation on MLK Day. I wish we were celebrating unified, looking back, everybody in our country looking back and saying, even though bad things happened in our history, we are able to overcome. We are able to be unified. We are able to eradicate those, yes, institutional racist policies that were for a time the law of the land. But that's not what we really talk about today, because we've taken a step backwards. Instead of continuing to course correct, instead of continuing to ensure that all men in their equal creation are protected, their rights, their unalienable rights are protected. Instead, we've devolved into a race-baiting society where we're more racially divided now than ever before, where our government institutions and our cultural institutions are teaching children to be racist, to feel oppressed, depending on the color of their skin, where we have companies, workplaces, and corporations that are actively training employees in racialism. This is not a good look for our country. This is not something to celebrate. It makes me sad on MLK Day that that's where we are as a nation. And then, of course, we have this terrible statue. And maybe there's some greater commentary to it that art lovers everywhere get that I don't. Maybe it's supposed to be a sad statue showing that the head has been removed from the movement, the civil rights movement, and all that's left is, I don't know, arms without a body. I couldn't even begin to analyze art for you here, but except to say that this is morbidly ugly, and so is the racialism and the race baiting from Democrats in our country. Okay, now we're going to talk about Andrew Tate. And like I said before, we're going to talk about the Biden classified document stuff. There's more to that than meets the eye. We're going to talk about that most likely tomorrow because so many of you asked me to talk about Andrew Tate today. I do want to talk about Andrew Tate. First of all, if you don't know who Andrew Tate is, that's okay. I'll give you an introduction. A lot of people don't, but you'd be surprised at how influential this guy was/is online for some very interesting reasons. So who is Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate is a former kickboxer turned social media influencer, an influencer specifically targeting young men, or specifically, I guess, young men like him. I don't know if he specifically targets young men, but they certainly follow him and like him and are influenced by him. And he got extremely rich off of making pornography. He's not a porn star himself that I know of, but he sets up studios and hires women, young women, to, they're called webcam girls, and he hires them to do sexual things in front of a camera, and men pay to watch them. So that's how he's gotten rich. He was kicked off big tech a couple months ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. He was kicked off of big tech because he has said what big tech claimed were some sexist, misogynistic things. And we'll get to those things in a minute. You can decide for yourself whether they're sexist or misogynistic. Fast forward to today. We're skipping a part, but we'll go back to it. Fast forward to today, and Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan were arrested a couple weeks ago in Romania, which is where they live. This was publicized maybe more than it would have been because it happened in the immediate aftermath of Andrew Tate's little tete-a-tete on Twitter with Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg, Andrew Tate had responded to a Greta Thunberg tweet about how many cars he has and how much fossil fuel that guzzles, and he was just trolling her. He was just trying to trigger her, and she tweeted back to him, and it's one of the most liked tweets on Twitter ever. And she made fun of him. You can go look up the tweet for yourself if you want. She made fun of him, and almost the day, 2 days after, a week after, while this was still a news story, he and his brother were arrested and accused of both rape and sex trafficking. Now, he denies this. He blames what he calls, quote unquote, the Matrix for attacking him, because the Matrix is basically his term for what we would call the swamp or the globalists, the powers that be, the ruling class. He calls it the Matrix. He blames the quote unquote Matrix for attacking him because he questioned some of these global leftist narratives. Like he questioned COVID, and he, probably COVID specifically is what they didn't like, but also the climate change alarmism he questioned. He's not a right-winger. He says he's a libertarian, but certainly not a cultural or more moral conservative here. No idea how he votes. So that's sort of the who it is of Andrew Tate. Now, what that doesn't explain is why he's so wildly famous, why he's so wildly influential, why on TikTok his videos would go viral constantly, that he was a threat to the point that big tech, in coordination with each other, all canceled him. They censored him completely. They booted him off. They deplatformed him. The reason for that is actually very, very interesting. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about American Hartford Gold. Is it only me, or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain? Because at every turn, we're getting less for more, while record high inflation, soaring interest rates, and a looming recession are threatening businesses, jobs, and retirement funds. Even Fed Chair Powell warned us to brace for more pain. I shudder to think what that means. Fortunately, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. You can do what I did. Call the only precious metals dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They make it simple and easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. If you call them right now, they'll give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 866-781-7499. That's 866-781-7499. Or text Liz to 65532. Again, that's 866-781-7499. Or text LIZ to 65532. Okay, so this is the who it is of this guy. He's former kickboxer turned social media influencer, very influential in with the demographic of young men. He also made himself rich, not really by being a kickboxer, but by making pornography, hiring these webcam girls. He was kicked off big tech. Then he was arrested in Romania. But why is he so influential among young men, specifically among young men on the right? Well, this is where I want his words to speak for himself. I'm not going to explain what he says. I'm going to show you what Andrew Tate says to young men. And I want to hear your immediate reaction to this. I want to hear your response, and I want to hear what emotion he evokes when you hear these words. So take a listen.
Females can do things men could never do. The fact that women can give life is literally a miracle. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not saying that the world can function without women. I'm not saying you're valueless. In fact, I'm saying that you're all so important that men have evolved to protect females. We're not out here to oppress you. We spent the largest majority of human time going to die in a field by ourselves to protect you while you sat at home. It's absolutely disrespectful to look at all the men who died in World War I, World War II, charging through fucking gunfire to protect their wives and children. That's why they did it. This is what men do. We've evolutionarily, we're designed to protect them. That's why we have faster reactions. And that's why if you get rid of the feminist, fem-centric crap and actually be truthfully honest with yourself, if you were to go into any kind of dangerous scenario, you would want a man at the helm.
Okay, so you can see why that's very popular, right? Not only is it a well-done production, it has that music that builds up, it's quick cuts, it has cool-looking shots, but also B-roll that illustrates what he's talking about. The message itself is not, and he presents it in a good way, he's a good showman. The message itself is not incorrect. I mean, you can quibble with little nuances here and there, but overall, I agree with what he's saying in this specific clip, that men are designed to protect women. Now, I would probably take it a step further and not just say evolutionarily. I would say the God-given roles that men are supposed to fulfill is the protection of women, but that's motivating for young men, right? Well, this is also what he says to young men about what happens to men when they grow up.
If you were to ask any boy, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, where do you want to be when you're 25, 30? They're going to say, big house, fast car, beautiful wife. That's what they're going to say. And slowly, the programming of the Matrix beats this dream out of men. So they get to my age, and they're fat, with a woman who doesn't love them, who drags them down, and their wife is in their ear saying, oh, you shouldn't watch Tristan and Andrew Tate. Those guys haven't grown up. Growing up is an analogy for having the aspiration that every boy has beaten out of them and accepting the programming of the Matrix.
Okay, so even that one, you might be thinking, Liz, I don't know why you're about to criticize this guy because he sounds okay to me. These messages sound okay. Well, yes, at first glance, they do sound okay, although that video gives us just the first red flag when he talks about what every boy wants when he grows up, that he wants a lot of money, that he wants a lot of cars, and that he wants a hot wife. That may be true, but there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. We're not gonna get to the commentary part yet. I don't wanna give away the commentary before you have a full picture of who Andrew Tate is and what he says. He also talks about how men influence women and how women can't be women unless men are men. Take a listen to this one.
I blame men for all this. I don't blame women for this. We live in a culture now where everyone's constantly blaming women for the fact that relationships are broken and women aren't women anymore. How can a woman be a woman if a man's not a man? Right. This is the man's fault. I think so many men are prepared to allow themselves to be disrespected and trodden on and talked like crap. Well, then what do you expect? If I go on a date with a girl and we're sitting there and she decides to insult me, I'm going to say, oh, it was very nice to meet you. Goodbye.
Okay, and then most importantly, this is actually what Trump did with the white working class. Andrew Tate is doing the same thing with young men between the ages of maybe 15 and 25. He's acknowledging the fact that these people feel overlooked in our culture, that these people feel taken advantage of, that these people feel like they've gotten the short end of the deal, that they are grinding day in and day out, and that they're reaching the end of their rope. And Andrew Tate looks at young men in the eye and says, I see you, I feel you, and here's how to get away from that. Listen to this one.
Attempted to cancel me because I became the most Googled man on the planet, and I had mass influence over youth, especially males, 18 to 23, 24-year-old males. Yeah. And those are the backbone of the slave force, and we always have been and always will be. Doesn't matter if you look at modern times or ancient times. If you had to build an aqueduct or a road or raise an army, you'd go and find the 18 to 22, 23-year-old fighting age males. We're the most important demographic on the planet. We're the strongest, we have the most energy, we're the most capable of doing the most difficult tasks. They're trying to reduce the masculine tendency to rebel because they want this subsect of the population ready to either go die in a ditch or work for fucking nothing. The last thing they want is this subsect of the population to think. For everyone watching at home, I would never kill myself.
Okay, be honest with me now. After watching those videos, especially if you're a man here, do you feel like you're sitting up straighter? Do you feel buoyed up? Do you feel like you have been seen and recognized and appreciated for things that you feel like you can't even speak in this culture? If I were a man, that's how I would feel. Because those are very motivating things that Andrew Tate just said, especially about how fighting age males, what they have done for our not just our country really, but for the entire globe. And done it in the name of protecting women and children. That's quite something. And how and how now our culture says to men at that age, in that demographic, that they should stop being men and that they are inherently bad for being men. We're gonna actually get into the larger part, the contrast, I should say, between what Andrew Tate is saying to young men and what our culture is saying to young men. But before we get into all of that, I wanna talk about some of these allegations that Andrew Tate is facing. So not even the ones in Romania yet, but if you rewind to 2015, Andrew Tate was accused in Britain of both rape and violent assault. Business Insider, I guess they're just called Insider now. Insider reports on some text messages that Vice News got a hold of that Tate had sent to some of the women who accused him of raping. And by the way, this is really disturbing stuff. So your call, whether you have kids in the room or not, but just a little warning that some of this stuff is graphic and it is really disturbing. This is what Tate said in one of the text messages that he sent to the woman who accused him of raping her. These text messages, like I said, were obtained by Vice. He said, and I quote, "I love raping you." He said, "Monsters are monsters. When you're under my control, I do whatever I please." If that doesn't make you sick to your stomach, then I don't know what will. That's a horrendous, it's an evil thing to say. The UK police, even though these women that were accusing him turned over their phones, they declined to prosecute Tate for these allegations of rape. Basically, they said that they didn't have an expectation that they could get a conviction, which I don't know what that means. I don't know if there was exculpatory evidence on these women's phones. I don't know if rape cases are notoriously hard to prove because generally there's just two people present, he said, she said, and unless there's some kind of injury, it is truthfully difficult to establish whether there was consent or whether it was regret. I know that that's an unpopular thing to say. I don't know the specifics of this case. What I do know is that text message is disgusting. That text message is gross. So this is what Insider says. Tate was arrested on December 17th of 2015 over that allegation. Tate had been arrested earlier that same year over allegations from two other women who also spoke to Vice. One accused him of rape and the other of violent assault, saying he strangled her. He was arrested over these allegations on July 18th of 2015, police confirmed to Insider. The UK's Crown Prosecution Service did not bring charges in any of the cases. The third accuser shared texts with which she said Tate sent her after he raped her. She gave those messages to police, she said. Insider could not independently verify them. The woman told Vice that she and Tate had known each other since 2009 and began dating in 2013. The first night that she went over to Tate's apartment, she told the publication that a switch had flipped after she told him she did not want to have sex that night. "I got up and looked at him and went, 'What's wrong?' the woman told Vice. The guy literally laid there and said, 'I'm just debating whether I should rape you or not.'" She told that outlet that Tate strangled her and raped her after that moment, calling her his property and asking, "Who do you belong to?" 6 months later, Insider writes, the woman had filed a police report, and by 2015, she was contacted by the police as they sought evidence on Tate. At that point, she turned over her phone, which included the texts with Tate after the incident. The voice notes provided by the woman from Tate struck these are beyond disturbing. I don't even actually want to read the entirety of what's in his voice notes. You can look that up for yourself if you want on insider.com. But suffice to say, these are some pretty serious allegations. Now, allegations don't equal guilt. Tate deserves the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. He was not charged by police for these things. So did he commit a criminal act? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and make the presumptuous judgment one way or the other. But I will say, regardless of whether this was a criminal act, this is really nasty behavior. This is horrendous behavior. This actually shows that he is not a man at all, that he is faking being a man. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second, because this plays into the allegations and the charges that he's facing as of December of 2022 in Romania. We're going to talk about that in just a sec. But first, I want to talk to you about 4 Patriots. A food shortage could be coming even in the US. This is what experts are writing as recently as July. I'm talking drought, inflation, even new political policies that are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. It's why survival food is more important to us than ever. So I invite you to create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food here. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food. hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the US, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits themselves, let me tell you about the kits. They're compact, they're sturdy, they're water resistant, they're easy to stack, so they're easy to store. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. You just add boiling water, simmer it, and then you can serve it. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use code Liz to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. Just go to 4patriots.com and use code Liz to get 10% off. That's 4patriots.com, code Liz. Start building your own stockpile today. Okay, so I have no idea if the allegations, these allegations of rape against Andrew Tate in 2015 were true or not. The police didn't prosecute him. They said that it would be hard for them to obtain a conviction. I don't know why. I don't know whether he did this or not. We saw his text messages. If those text messages are authentic, they're a condemnation of his character. Beyond that, I mean, it's evil. It shows him acting in an evil way. So fast forward to December of 2022, and a man called the U.S. Embassy in Romania to report that a former girlfriend of his had been kidnapped and was being held against her will by Andrew Tate, that he was forcing her to be one of the webcam girls that we talked about, how he built his wealth on these pornographic videos that he hired women to make and then he sold. And this man reported to the U.S. Embassy that this former girlfriend, who was an American citizen, was being held against her will. So Romanian police staged a raid. They investigated this. They raided Tate's house and the studio that he used to film this porn. And they found several women, and some of the women claimed that they were being held against their will. And so Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan Tate were arrested on these charges. They are in prison right now awaiting trial. They've been denied bail. And did he rape these women? I don't know that either. Did he traffic these women? Was he holding them against their will? Were they sex slaves? I don't know. I'm interested to see this court case play out. I do know two things. I do know, first of all, that Andrew Tate himself is gross. Andrew Tate himself is not a good role model for young men. Andrew Tate is the equivalent of a false prophet for reasons that we'll unpack momentarily. And I do know for a fact, the one thing we know for a fact is that Andrew Tate exploited these women and profited off of prostituting them. That's what pornography is. It's prostitution. It's the sale of sex. So he, of course, claims that the Romanian authorities are targeting him because he opposes the quote-unquote matrix, which he uses that phrase to describe what we would call the globalists, like the swamp, but at the international level. And I think you guys all know that I'm, of all the skeptics of government in the world, I'm maybe the highest of the high skeptics of the administrative state and the swamp. But I would be much more convinced that this arrest of Andrew Tate by Romanian authorities was fishy business, was targeting him because he had pushed back against the radical leftist narrative, if he weren't a creepy pimp. That muddies the water a little bit. The legal part of this we will watch unfold. If there's shady stuff, we will call it out. I'm interested to see whether there is. I'm always open to the idea that government is abusing their authority. But here's the thing. The larger cultural thing here, the reason that so many of you asked me to talk about this, the reason that Andrew Tate went viral all the time is because he is casting his line with a message that is very, very appealing to a demographic who is under attack. Young men, not just in our country, but in the entire Western world. This may not be as true outside of countries that haven't copied the US woke culture. But young men have not only been neglected and underappreciated, they are actively under attack. They are told that because they are men, they are racist, they are rapists. They are told that masculinity is toxic. They're told that the only thing to do is to constantly apologize for their history of oppressing women, even if they themselves never oppressed women, and that there's nothing they can ever do to atone for this. So the best thing that they should do is to make themselves weak and feminized. There is an all-out assault on masculinity, and Andrew Tate speaks to that. Now, where he goes very, very wrong is the fact that he's a sexist. He thinks women are property. Now, he claims that he plays a character, but that's the same thing Alex Jones said in his legal defense. And I understand that that is a defense that anyone in the entertainment industry uses in order to distance themselves from the things that they said. Oh, don't take me literally. I was joking. I play a character. That's not really me. It's a lame excuse. I don't buy it. I certainly don't buy it. Again, I don't know if these allegations are true. I know why young men listen to him. He acknowledges that young men are overlooked. He acknowledges that it's hard to be a young man. He acknowledges that culture demonizes manliness. Our culture in the United States tells young men that they are bad inherently. Our culture pushes men towards being wimpy, feminized versions of themselves. In fact, our culture pushes men beyond that and says, maybe you should castrate yourself, chemically castrate yourself, physically castrate yourself, put on a wig and some lipsticks and heels and pretend that you're a woman, identify as a woman. And whether or not young men feel that they can say this, it makes being a young man very hard. And so young men need to hear that what our culture is telling them they should be is false. They need role models. The problem is the role model should not be Andrew Tate. I would liken what Andrew Tate does to someone preaching a false gospel, meaning the first glance, the first sentence of what is said might be correct. That men are designed to protect women, that men should be manly, that men should be respected, that in order for women to be feminine, men have to be masculine. That's all correct. Just like if someone preaching a false gospel might say, Jesus loves you. Jesus wants the best for your life. Jesus invites you to be part of the kingdom of God. All of those things are true, but it's what comes next that matters the most. And young men fall for him because they lack role models, they lack father figures. And so instead, what do young men do? Young men without role models turn to pornography. The example of what young men think of as alpha, manly men that should be copied, men that should be emulated, men that are envied, are men that are in porn. That's what young men fill their minds with. And what does Andrew Tate do? Andrew Tate not only creates porn for these young men, filling their minds with poisonous ideas, Tate acts the part of the quote-unquote man in porn. That's the character that he plays. And that is evil. He's fishing with a tiny bit of truth to reel young men into something that will wreck their lives even more than the toxic culture that we live in right now. So again, journey back just a little bit. Andrew Tate was banned by all the big tech platforms, by Facebook, by Twitter, by TikTok, all of these different places because he says things that some people find offensive. Now, maybe you've found some of the things that he said today offensive. There were some of the things in those text messages that are beyond abhorrent. Those are not the things that he was saying on social media. The things that he was saying on social media were the videos that I showed you. And when he was banned from social media, I actually remember texting a friend of mine who works in the industry, and I was saying, well, it's too bad that big tech banned Andrew Tate because it's too bad because it created sympathy for him. Because Andrew Tate is a fake man who mistreats and exploits women. He's not a good role model, but because big tech banned him, it's going to make people defend him. And I was disappointed to see that some conservatives actually defended Andrew Tate's character versus just defending him against being deplatformed, which is right and proper. I mean, I remember back when Alex Jones was first canceled off of Twitter for saying horrendous things about the Sandy Hook school shooting. He accused parents of staging it or something horrendous. And he was banned from Twitter for it. And I said, listen, what he said was beyond horrendous, like inexplicably horrendous, but he's the canary in the coal mine. The big tech overlords are moving the Overton window by banning Alex Jones. And if we allow them to ban people on the fringes, then they're going to move that window closer and closer to you. And soon you will be defined as being on the fringe. And that's exactly what we saw happen. So I understand defending Andrew Tate when he was deplatformed off of social media. I understand defending him against censorship, but defending his character is an overcompensation and was the wrong thing to do because Tate is not a real man. Tate is a loser playing at a man. He's mistreating women, and his promiscuity is the opposite is the opposite of true masculinity. The message that young men need to hear. I'm not just going to sit here all day and criticize somebody for doing something wrong. There's alternatives for young men. Maybe not as flashy as Andrew Tate, but there are good, strong, manly leaders who tell young men, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate who you are supposed to be as a man, and here's the way to live your life accordingly so that you live both a masculine and fulfilled lifestyle. There's a Catholic priest by the name of Father Chad Rippinger, and he speaks the message that young men across the world need to hear. Take a listen to this.
Now, masculinity is under full-blown attack because of the absolute hatred that demons have for God the Father and the fact that men are in the image of God the Father.
How about that? Here's what I would say. Here's the entire summary of the verdict of Andrew Tate, the character, not the legal part. The legal part we'll have to wait and see. The character of Andrew Tate and what he says. Andrew Tate has partially diagnosed the correct ailment in our culture when it comes to how we treat young men. But he has miserably failed to prescribe the right antidote. In fact, in deliberately prescribing poison, he has caused more harm than not saying anything at all. He is the definition of someone preaching a false gospel. Okay, guys, and we'll follow, by the way, we'll follow how this turns out legally. If there's a problem with his court case, we'll call it out. Tomorrow, we are going to talk about the Biden classified documents. This was just a drip of more documents that were found in Biden's residences and so-called private offices all over the country all weekend. It's funny because when this happened to Trump, it's all the mainstream media could possibly talk about. Every headline was about how Trump essentially gave our nuclear weapons to North Korea, even though that wasn't the case. But with Biden, it was just an accident, the mainstream media said. There's more to this than meets the eye, my friends. We can sit here and we can call the Democrats hypocrites. We can call the mainstream media. We can say, oh, the only standards they have are double standards for how they cover this when it's Biden versus Trump. All of those things are true, but the Biden classified document scandal goes a little bit deeper than that. There's what I would call some political incest that underpins what's going on, the targeting of Trump and then what's happening to Biden. So you don't want to miss that. Tomorrow we will be talking about that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.